I still hear the laughter. It cut deeper than any bullet ever could. My father's booming voice carried across the reunion hall like it was a stage, and I was the joke. He raised his glass, smirked, and announced to cousins, aunts, uncles, old neighbors, "She's just a Navy enlistee, nothing special. Don't let her uniform fool you. She files papers and polishes brass." Their chuckles rolled over me. I kept my face straight, but inside, my chest burned. This wasn't the battlefield, yet I felt ambushed. The sting wasn't just humiliation. It was betrayal. My name is Meredith. I am 34 years old, and I serve as a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy SEALs. The reunion was in Virginia, in the rented ballroom of a hotel lined with golden lights, the smell of roast beef and cheap wine filling the air. My family wore suits and floral dresses. I wore my uniform, freshly pressed, ribbons gleaming. It should have been a moment of pride. Instead, it became a night of exposure. My father, Frank Hayes, was once a respected contractor. He built homes, raised money for community projects. To outsiders, he was charming, the man who shook hands with mayors and donated to church drives. But to me, he was always a man hungry for control. He thrived when others were beneath him. At the reunion, he basked in attention, spinning stories about his business deals, his golf scores, even lies about political connections. But when the spotlight shifted toward me, his daughter, who had clawed through grueling training, who had seen death in deserts and oceans, he dragged me down with a smirk. My mother sat beside him, smiling faintly, pretending not to notice the sharpness of his words. That was her survival. Silence. My younger brother Daniel, now an accountant, laughed along, though uneasily. And my sister Colleen, the only one who ever believed in me, shot me a look, apology in her eyes, fury in her clenched jaw. I remembered another night years ago. He had told my high school boyfriend at dinner, "Don't expect much from her. She'll never make it past boot camp." I had walked upstairs that night with tears I refused to let him see. And the next morning, I ran 5 miles before dawn. Now here he was again, weaponizing my uniform, belittling my years of service, painting me as a clerk while I had led men through sandstorms, infiltrated enemy compounds, dragged bleeding comrades to helicopters. The air in the room shifted when a family friend shouted, "Wait, isn't she the SEAL who was part of the counter-terror op last year?" A ripple of shock moved across the crowd. Glasses lowered. Conversations paused. Eyes swung back to me. My father's smirk faltered. He muttered, "That's classified nonsense," and reached for his wine, hands trembling slightly. He spilled crimson across the white tablecloth. I locked eyes with him. For the first time, he looked unsettled. Not because of who I was, but because others finally saw it too. The rest of the evening blurred. Aunts approached me, whispering questions. A cousin snapped a photo with me, grinning like I was a celebrity. My father sulked in the corner, jaw tight, sipping glass after glass. His control slipped, and I watched him drown in the very attention he once craved. But inside me, anger tightened like a coiled rope. This wasn't about a reunion joke. It was about years of mockery, years of dismissals, years of him reducing me to nothing whenever I rose above. The humiliation was over. The reckoning had only begun. And I knew one thing with absolute clarity as I left that hall. My father would learn that the power of a SEAL wasn't just on the battlefield. I walked into the night air, the cool Virginia breeze brushing my face. My sister caught up to me, her heels clattering on the pavement. She grabbed my arm, whispered, "He won't stop." "He never does." I nodded, my fists clenched. "I know," I said quietly. "But this time, neither will I." The plan for revenge began that very moment. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an old teammate. He had no idea how perfectly timed his words were. "Meredith, the world only sees the battles you let them see. Question is, are you ready for your next one?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Yes, I was ready. The morning after the reunion, I sat in my hotel room staring at my uniform hanging on the closet door. The smell of cheap champagne from the ballroom still clung to my hair, reminding me of every sneer, every laugh. My father's voice echoed in my skull like artillery fire. She is just an enlistee. I had faced gunfire. I had navigated seas under black skies with nothing but stars to guide me. Yet somehow those words had cut deeper. I ran my hand across the ribbons on my chest. Each one carried blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Not just mine, but of brothers and sisters who never came home. And still, in my own family's eyes, I was just a punchline. Breakfast with my family was no easier. The hotel restaurant smelled of bacon and bitter coffee. My father, nursing a hangover, sat at the head of the table like a general in retreat. My mother buttered toast, pretending nothing had happened. Daniel buried himself in his phone as always, cowardice disguised as busyness. Only Colleen spoke. "You humiliated her last night," she snapped, her fork clattering against her plate. My father sneered. "She can handle it. Navy makes them tough, right? Or is that just for show?" I gripped my coffee mug so hard I thought it might shatter. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Dad," I said, my voice low, steady. "You think I've spent my career pushing papers? Do you want to know what I've actually done?" He leaned back in his chair, waving dismissively. Classified fairy tales. My sister's eyes watered. "Tell him, Meredith." I took a slow breath. Images flooded me. Desert heat burning my lungs, the thrum of a Black Hawk over Afghan mountains, the copper taste of dust and blood when we breached a compound at dawn. "I've carried men out under fire," I said. "I've stood at their graves. I've stared into the eyes of killers and not blinked. And while you've spent years tearing me down to lift yourself up, I've been fighting so you could sleep safely in your bed." For a moment, silence. Even Daniel raised his eyes. My father's lips parted, but no words came. Memories pulled me back. I was 19 again, dripping sweat during SEAL training. Mud caked on my arms, lungs burning as instructors screamed. I remembered collapsing beside the surf, staring at the gray ocean, hearing one instructor mutter, "She'll break." I hadn't broken. I never would. And yet my own father was trying harder than any drill instructor to make me doubt myself. That night, Colleen came to my room. She sat cross-legged on the bed, her hair spilling across her shoulders, her eyes fierce. "You need to stop letting him win," she said. "What do you suggest?" I asked. "Show them. Show all of them. Stop hiding who you really are." Her words lit something in me. For years, I had buried my operations, my medals, my scars behind walls of secrecy. The Navy demanded discretion. I obeyed. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to let my family see the truth. Not by bragging, by exposing hypocrisy. The plan formed quickly. The reunion wasn't just a family affair. It stretched over a weekend, with one final dinner planned at my parents' house. That dinner would become my battlefield. I reached out to an old teammate, Chief Petty Officer Nadine Walker, one of the toughest women I'd ever known. She owed me a favor from an op overseas. "Meredith," she said over the phone, her voice gravelly, steady. "If you want them to understand, then let me stand beside you. They'll listen when they realize you're not alone." Her offer hit like a lifeline. I wouldn't have to face this war alone. The next evening, I arrived at my parents' home. The smell of barbecue drifted from the backyard, laughter spilling into the summer night. Strings of lights hung across the deck, glowing amber against the darkening sky. As I stepped inside, my father greeted me with a glass of whiskey and a smirk. "Back for round 2?" he said. I straightened my uniform. My medals glimmered under the porch light. "No, Dad," I said, my voice calm, deliberate. "This time, I'm here to win." Behind me, the screen door creaked open. Nadine walked in, Full uniform, chest stacked with ribbons that told their own story. The laughter on the deck faltered. My father's jaw slackened. This was only the beginning. The room went quiet when Nadine entered. She was a wall of presence, broad-shouldered, her uniform crisp, her eyes sharp as steel. The glow of the deck lights reflected off her medals. Even the children playing in the yard stilled, as if instinct told them this was no ordinary guest. My father's smirk twisted, but it didn't reach his eyes. He tried to laugh. "And who might this be? Another— what was it you called yourself, Meredith? A clerk with shiny buttons?" Nadine stepped forward, her boots thudding against the deck boards like warning shots. "Chief Petty Officer Nadine Walker, United States Navy SEALs." Her voice was clipped, sharp. "I bled with your daughter in places you'll never see. I watched her drag a man twice her size across open sand while bullets sliced the air. She's no clerk. She's the reason some of us are alive." Gasps rippled through the family. My aunt clutched her pearl necklace. My cousin's mouth fell open. My brother Daniel actually set his phone down for once, blinking in disbelief. But my father? He chuckled. A dry, defensive sound. "Stories. Anyone can spin them. You military types live off exaggerations. You wear those uniforms to cover up empty lives." Something inside me snapped. I remembered the cold of that night in Mosul. The compound raid. Smoke choking the air. Gunfire rattling walls. I remembered pressing my hand against a comrade's wound, whispering through grit, "Stay with me, damn it." His eyes glazed before the helicopter lifted him out. Empty lives? I carried ghosts. I stepped closer to my father, lowering my voice so it cut sharper than any shout. "You think this is about medals? About stories? No, Dad. It's about sacrifice. It's about the fact that when you were busy playing king at barbecues, I was burying brothers in flag-draped coffins." For the first time, his face lost its flush. A flicker of unease crossed his eyes, though his lips pressed into stubborn silence. My mother stood at the edge, wringing her hands. "Frank, please," she whispered. But as always, she stopped short of defiance. Colleen's gaze burned into him. "You should be proud, Dad, but you've spent her whole life tearing her down." "Why?" The question hung heavy. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Dinner continued stiffly, the air thick as smoke. Family tried to laugh, tried to gossip about jobs and kids, but eyes kept drifting back to me and Nadine. We sat straight-backed, uniforms immaculate, eating in silence. Finally, Daniel spoke. "You know, she saved people? Like, really?" His voice cracked with uncertainty, like a boy realizing the world wasn't what he thought. "Yes," Nadine said firmly. "More than you can count. And not just Americans. She saved children, villagers, even enemies who surrendered. She carried honor when others carried hate." Daniel swallowed, shame flickering across his face. He looked at me, really looked, for the first time in years. But my father wasn't done. After dessert, when plates clinked and wine poured, he rose to his feet, glass in hand. "Family," he declared, voice loud, brittle. "Let's not forget, military or not, she's still my daughter. And in this house, I decide what matters." It was his last grasp at control, his crown slipping. I stood too. My boots clicked against the hardwood, commanding silence. My heart pounded, but my voice came steady. "No, Dad. Tonight, the truth decides." I pulled a small box from my pocket. Inside, folded tight, was a flag I had been given after a brother's burial. I unfolded it slowly, the stars catching in the lamplight. "This isn't a decoration. This is a life. This is what we carry home when someone doesn't make it back. You belittle me, you belittle them, and I won't let you dishonor them again." The flag trembled slightly in my hands, not from weakness, but from fury barely contained. The room froze. Even the wine glass in my father's hand seemed suspended midair. I stared him down, my voice a razor's edge. Mock me again, and you will find out just how powerful silence can be when your own family turns away. The lights hummed. The smell of grilled meat clung to the air. My father's jaw clenched, his knuckles white around his glass. He didn't speak. He couldn't. The silence was my victory. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Because I realized in that instant, revenge wasn't about silencing him once. It was about exposing him forever. And the chance to do it was closer than I thought. I left the flag folded on the dining table. Nobody touched it. The stars and stripes lay there like a silent judge, watching over every nervous glance, every sip of wine that suddenly tasted bitter. My father sat rigid, glass trembling in his hand, his face flushed red. But silence wasn't enough. The years of his mockery, every time he told me I was nothing, every time he laughed at my ambitions, demanded a reckoning. That reckoning came faster than I expected. The following week, I was invited to speak at a veterans benefit dinner in D.C. It was a formal event. Suits, uniforms, senators, gold-trimmed tables. Cameras were everywhere, streaming the speeches live. I accepted, knowing this was the chance to take the battlefield home, where my father could never twist the truth again. When I told my mother and siblings, they hesitated. When I told my father, he sneered. "Another dog and pony show," he muttered. "Don't waste our time with your soldier stories." That was when I made sure the entire family had seats reserved in the front row. The night of the dinner, the ballroom smelled of polish and roasted lamb. A Navy band played softly in the background. The crowd glimmered with medals and tuxedos, anticipation buzzing under the chandeliers. I stepped to the podium in full dress uniform. The lights were hot, my collar stiff, but I felt calm. For once, calm. I began not with glory but with truth. I've been mocked more by my family than by my enemies. I've been told I was nothing, just a clerk, just a uniform. But here's what they didn't see. I painted pictures in words, carrying men through rubble, kneeling over brothers bleeding out, saving children trapped in a firefight. The audience was silent, some with tears catching in their eyes. I spoke of discipline, of scars, of the invisible weight of war. And then I let the words sharpen. Every time someone laughs at service, they laugh at the coffins draped in flags. Every time someone belittles sacrifice, they spit on graves. And then I looked down, straight at my father. His face had gone pale. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Daniel sat stiff, lips parted. Colleen squeezed my hand beneath the table before I rose again. The crowd erupted in applause, thunder rolling off the chandeliers. Afterward, strangers approached me with handshakes and gratitude. Senators asked for photos. A general clasped my shoulder and said, "Lieutenant Commander Hayes, you honor us." My father stood off to the side, swallowed by the crowd, a man who had lost his kingdom. When it was over, I approached him. He tried to muster his old smirk, but his jaw betrayed him. It trembled. "You wanted me small," I said softly. "But tonight, you saw me as I am. And so did they." He looked away, but I pressed on. "Mock me again, and you'll find yourself mocked alone, because the truth doesn't need me to defend it anymore. It speaks for itself." The drive home was silent. My medals clinked faintly with each turn of the car. I thought of the men we buried, the women who never came back, the children who carried scars no one would ever see. I thought of the weight I'd carried all these years, heavier than any rucksack. And for once, it felt lighter. My revenge wasn't in crushing him with fists or screaming back louder. It was in forcing him to choke on his own lies until the world saw him for what he was, small, bitter, afraid. I would carry scars forever. But I had finally broken his crown. Weeks later, Colleen called. Her voice was soft, relieved. "He doesn't mock you anymore, Meredith. He doesn't mention you at all." I exhaled, staring at the folded flag resting on my dresser. My brothers, My sisters. The ones who gave everything. I don't need him to, I whispered. They know who I am. That's enough. And in the silence that followed, I felt it. Peace. Final punchline, revenge ending. He mocked me for years. Now he lives in shame,